William Morrow and HarperAudio present The Impostors: How Republicans Quit Governing and Seized American Politics by Steve Benen. Read by Ron Butler. Chapter 1. We're not great at the whole governing thing. Meet the Post-Policy Party. Just 2 months into Donald Trump's presidency, Republican policymakers were determined to replace the Affordable Care Act with a regressive alternative. For the party, tearing down the health care reform law known as Obamacare was more than just a legislative priority. It was an obsession. As the Trump era began and the process moved forward, Republican leaders were practically giddy at the prospect of completing their crusade and killing their white whale. On March 7, 2017, House Speaker Paul Ryan, a Republican from Wisconsin, showed uncharacteristic bravado about his party's prospects, telling reporters he could guarantee the GOP plan would pass. 17 days later, the effort collapsed, and there was no great mystery as to why. Republican leaders struggled mightily to craft a coherent proposal, defend its virtues, and explain exactly what problems they were trying to solve. As his gambit unraveled, Ryan told reporters, "I think what you're seeing is, we're going through the inevitable growing pains of being an opposition party to becoming a governing party." It was an unexpected admission from one of the party's highest-profile leaders, 5 years removed from his stint as a vice presidential nominee. With one unscripted comment, Congress's top GOP lawmaker had effectively conceded that the modern Republican Party, in a dominant position in the nation's capital, having controlled at least one chamber of Congress for 18 of the previous 22 years, was not ready to be a governing party. A dejected Republican congressional staffer, reflecting on the collapse of the GOP's health care legislation, added, "I'm starting to think that while we're pretty good at winning elections, we're not great at the whole governing thing." It was more than a throwaway line from a frustrated aide. It was also a concise summary of one of the most important problems plaguing American politics in the 21st century. Many voters have grown accustomed to the idea of a national competition pitting two governing parties against each other. One has a more progressive vision, the other a more conservative one. But for most Americans, Democrats and Republicans are basically mirror images of one another, each with an internal range of opinions. The electorate has long had reason to assume that both major parties were mature and responsible policy-making entities, their philosophical differences notwithstanding. The actions of the Republican Party over the last decade have made it abundantly clear that it's time to reevaluate that assumption. The current iteration of the GOP is indifferent to the substance of governing. It is disdainful of expertise and analysis. It is hostile toward evidence and arithmetic. It is tethered to few, if any, meaningful policy preferences. It does not know and does not care about how competing proposals should be crafted, scrutinized, or implemented. The modern Republican Party has become a post-policy party. The first GOP repeal and replace effort on health care was a striking example of the party failing to even pretend that substance guides its work in any significant way. But it was emblematic of a much larger truth. In recent years, Republicans have brought their post-policy posture to practically every debate and every issue. Some of this can be explained by GOP officials being put in a position to exercise governmental power despite an ideological disposition that's reflexively antagonistic toward the non-military public sector. As the New York Times' Neil Irwin wrote early on in Donald Trump's presidency, most Republican officials routinely have an aversion to doing the messy work of making policy. If you make a career opposing even the basic work of making the government run, it's hard to pivot to writing major legislation. But more often than not, Republicans simply find it easier to bypass the rigors of real policymaking. Reading policy analyses,
Sample complete. Ready to continue?